the future of photography. And as Hans-Peter explained, it's, the future's coming. We can't stop it. And there's some really interesting things coming that we can see are coming. We can predict or forecast some very clear trends that will take us to a certain point at some time. And these are straightforward things, so technological advances, but there's some other things that are totally unpredictable, and that's how, as humans, we react to this change. And this is where the discussion becomes really interesting and even more critical and important because we can influence the future. The future's there, it's going to happen, but we can make a difference on how it happens. And the whole idea of the Unfestival, and the beauty of this Unfestival, really, I think, is that it exists within this larger context of the Nordic Light Festival, which has been going on now for 8 years. And this festival has just been an incredible collection of classical photography. We come here to just relax and enjoy the results of these wonderful photographers from all over the world. So by throwing the Unfestival into the middle of this symphony of photography, it's a really interesting contrast, and I think this is really unique. This is the first year that we've done the Unfestival. I think it's the first time anything like this has ever been done quite like this. And personally, what I saw coming out of it was something so special that I haven't seen anywhere else. So I think you're all witnessing a kind of history being made right now, and certainly the people that were part of the Unfestival are part of history. So we've collected a few of the people that are still left. A lot of people have left Christian Sun, so they're not here now. So we had about 25 people at one point, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less as the days went on. We have a few people that represent the larger group that worked very hard for 2 days. And we're going to have an undiscussion or a dialogue with them. Now, there's some other people. I see Eugene is here, and I thought I saw Oliver up there. There's a couple other people that were involved with the festival that are here in the audience, and I hope you'll participate as well from your vantage point as well. But we just needed to kind of bring it down to a manageable size here. So the format, what we'll do is, before we introduce each other, Hans-Peter, do you want to introduce what's going on behind us here? So what we'll do is you'll introduce that, and then we'll have each person give a personal introduction, and then we'll just start that dialogue.
Perfect. So you're seeing a bunch of images there. I think there's about 30 that should be looping. It looks like maybe they're not. That's user error. But we'll keep playing those. And those images were crowdsourced on a great little app service called IM. And Severin is here and will describe IM for us in a moment. But IM it's kind of like a little bit Instagram-ish, a little hipster-matish, but it's in that space. And it's a place where people, can publish and share photography. And so what IM had done is they'd issued a mission, a call for participation in this conference, and the topic was Nordic Light. As they said, present images that you think capture Nordic Light, whatever that might mean to you. And so you'll see in the background here, a few of us here in this group had selected about 30 of these images that struck us. And there's actually, if you go to im.com, it's EYEEM.com. And so if you go to IM, you'll see, and then you type in Nordic Light, you'll see an amazing gallery of images. And the thing that was really cool for me was that about I don't know how many we have today, but about 880, 900 people contributed images, about almost 2,900 images in the course of about 2 weeks to this. And so this is a little selection of that. So we'll run that in the background. You can enjoy it as we go. I'll see if I can figure out how to turn it into a looping thing, and then I'll hand it back to Mickey.
Okay, so we'll just, why don't you go ahead and grab the mic. We'll just work our way through. Just take a minute or two just to say who you are and what brought you to the Unfestival, and then we'll go from there.
All right, so hi, I'm Severin. I'm part of the team that makes IM, which is a photo sharing app. We did this mission, we generated those photos. Basically, our vision behind IM is we want to revolutionize the way you discover people, topics, and locations through the photos you take. So it's not only about photo sharing, but it's about discovering photos through the photos you take yourself. So we have a system of categorizing your photo into the location where you took the photo, into what kind of photo you took, to actually show you photos that you are interested. So if you're interested in Nordic light, or if you're interested in street photography, we will show you street photography, which is a way to basically make these millions or even half billions of photos being uploaded every day relevant to you and give you an individual stream. The reason why I'm here at the Unfestival of Photography is because we try to give you a solution that's part of the future of photography. So we have a vision where we want to go, and we have a vision what our app is and what it makes. And for me, it was very interesting to talk about what other people have for the vision of the future of photography. And we're constantly developing our app to basically serve the needs and find a solution of how you can share photos and distribute your photos in the future. And that's why I was here.
Hi, my name is Ivan Cabero Belaunde. I recently joined Nokia. I am chief architect for imaging at Nokia here, working under Hans Peter's group on new product development. Most recently, I come from Apple, where I worked on the digital photography applications group, iPhoto and Aperture. And before, I was at Adobe Systems, where I worked in the research group on leading. I was the lead engineer on the development of Photoshop's content over fill, and the architect for Flash Video. What brings me here is to take part of this conversation, hopefully share and learn about the future of photography, and to enjoy the beauty of the exhibits here, which there's really been amazing.
You didn't come for the weather?
Not so much, no.
Hi, my name is Knut Koivisto. I'm a professional photographer from Stockholm. I started as an analog photographer a lot of years ago, but I took the steps over to the digital world about eight years ago. And before that, for 3 years, I tried to find every possible idea of why I shouldn't use digital, why analog was better, until I had to pick up a digital camera for an assignment. And the next day I called my dealer and said, I want one of these cameras because it's much better than the ones that I use. I think I'm here because I'm a professional photographer, and we can't just have technicians deciding the future. You need a photographer's view of things. And what I think is fantastic is that these technicians, they put out new things, but then the photographers and the artists pick them up and say, hey, what about if you do this with this thing? And they do things that you couldn't imagine when you constructed them. That's fantastic. In Sweden, I use extensively Facebook as a mean of communication. What I do, my pictures and my photography, and that isn't necessarily my work. That's a lot of my private things, and that has led me to be leader of something in Sweden which is called Mobilfotoskolan, that is in the hands of Telenor actually. And also since October, we have a place in Stockholm called Fotografiska, which is 5,500 square meters dedicated for photography. They handed over their Instagram account to me, so since the beginning of October I am managing that and putting up all the pictures in that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate Yordahl, and I teach at Foothill College in Los Altos Hills, which is just south of San Francisco. And so I come on to this panel both as a user, I'm a fine art photographer, and as a teacher. And as I said the first day in the group, whatever you all think of, I'll be teaching next. And so I need to keep both a voice in terms of what gets made and an eye on what's going to happen next. As a creator, and I always feel that my right to walk in a classroom is based on the fact that I'm a practicing artist and that I use my photography and make photographs on a regular basis. And I use both digital capture, I have an archive of film negatives, I do platinum prints and silver prints from digital negatives. And so there's this whole round of both the latest technology and the oldest materials coming together in a really exciting way. And so as I listen to our conversation and I think of the different ways of sharing, the different ways that are coming, and the different ways that photography is part of our lives, I get really excited about the future and about what we'll do next. The conversations we had with Chris Rainier being there and talking about stories and about the indigenous people and how he's helping them tell their stories through digital, and talking about the future of photography with the webs. It was just an amazingly rich conversation that we could bring then to the people who will enable us to do those things. So I'm really glad to be here, and I thank Nordic Light for making space in their amazing schedule for us.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Peter Krogh, and I'm from Washington, D.C. I'm a 30-year commercial photographer, and I wear a number of different hats here. I have worked for many years with an American professional association called ASMP that works as an advocate for the independent photographer. I also wrote a book called The Damn Book, Digital Asset Management for Photographers, and it's a personal mission of mine to help photographers to create sustainable collections of their images, to manage their images effectively and make the greatest use of them possible. And I was sent here by Adobe, for whom I have worked as a informal, unpaid advisor, mostly unpaid, as they develop the tools Lightroom and Photoshop principally, and bring the next generation of that software forward. And I'm intensely interested in the intersection of the technical, the creative, the business practice, and the implications of all of those. And this has been a really great place to explore that.
Great. So now, should we just? I'm going to ask some questions. You want to? We can go back and forth if you want,
Sure.
Hans-Peter. So I'd like to just start off maybe just throwing several things struck me the last couple of days, and this gives me a chance to say what really stuck in my mind. Hans-Peter mentioned the uncamera. I don't know if you called it that, but the idea of the camera that actually reverses the effects of everything that's happening. I thought that was something that kind of stuck in my mind as every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And as we move into a world where cameras are everywhere, it seems to me that would be a kind of a natural reaction to have some kind of an uncamera evolve. The other thing that stuck in my mind was the idea of a smart photograph. And the photograph itself obviously contains the visual information, but one of the things that came out when we were talking is that the photograph will, in the future, will have even much more information embedded with it. It's maybe a little bit of sound, certainly geographic location information. You can let your imagination go on what can go into that photograph and what will make it a smart photograph, so that opens up all kinds of possibilities. So those were a couple of things that really kind of stuck in my mind. But I think there were some other interesting areas that we could maybe get a little bit deeper into, and I'm gonna get right to something that I know will be of interest to a lot of you in this audience, and it certainly was of interest of everybody at the Unfestival too. Among all this other discussion, there was the discussion of how is a photographer going to make a living in the future. So I recognize a lot of people here. There's a lot of photographers in this room, and that was certainly something that we really jumped in and tackled and took a look at. And I think that's something that we could share with the audience that would be very interesting. And I guess I'll start with Kate on that one, and she can talk a little bit, and everybody can give a little bit of feedback on that subject, the idea of how are photographers going to sustain themselves? Is it, how are we going to make a living? How are we going to live when all this new technology comes just flowing in on top of us?
Well, we did have a very interesting conversation on this topic. The Webbs were part of it, and you were part of it. And what we really talked about was the fact that photography has always been an incredibly difficult field to make a living at. And that's sort of a given when you're doing something creative. And the sense that there's so many more pictures is a real thing, and that many of the everyday jobs of photography have gone away. Things that people might have been paid for, much like the examples that we've heard about painting. Painters were paid to do portraits, and then came photography. And so painting had to be something else. I think that's really happening in a lot of ways to photography. And so one of the cores that we came up with is the idea of branding. The idea that you need to do something authentic, consistent, and personal that will make your voice and your photography something special, something that will leap above the crowd. And I think we saw that in our photographer who won the prize, Eric, can you say his last name? Eric, anyone remember Eric? Oh, sorry, Eric, someone out there knows Eric's name. Yeah, I mean, it was amazing, his presentation. And what did he do? He really branded his vision and took his vision into a commercial world. And so that was a lot of what we talked about. Also, both the difficulties in the new model, that magazines aren't sending people out on assignment like they maybe used to, and there maybe aren't the same opportunities to sell prints or as many. And at the same time, there is the same social media that is creating this incredible photo stream that's also going to give us the opportunity to sell our works and our services directly. And so there was a lot of excitement around that too.
Just pass, if somebody wants to add to Kate, just go ahead. Yeah.
No, you don't. You're not a photographer. I'm a photographer.
It's okay if he wants to
Yeah.
say something.
I'd expand a little bit on the concept of branding, your personal brand, and I think there's a tremendous amount to be learned from the efforts that people are already doing themselves on the internet. Roger Ebert, who recently passed away, did an amazing job of basically taking his brand on the internet and being able to start a newsletter that was a subscriptions newsletter where he got to expand and give his fans a closer look behind the scenes, doing festivals and conferences and things like that. So there is one of the better known political blogs called The Daily Dish by Andrew Sullivan. Just went into this model where they're asking people to subscribe. It's just is model akin to the NPR model where you contribute some given amount a year, just because you want to support the activities of the artist, whatever. In this case, it's writing, but it could just as easily be photography. And so I think there's a tremendous amount that could be learned from in this arena from the other successful efforts that are out there, even if they are in other media.
And I can only go to myself because see what I have done. But I started to write with some other photographers on the blog, and also I started to put out pictures on Facebook. And I really did that just because for the sheer fun of doing it, just to share what I have done, show to get the pictures out. And suddenly I had a channel where I put up pictures. I put up out pictures every day on Facebook, and now that I do Instagram also. And I counted 1 year ago, and I put up 1,000 pictures on Facebook every year. And that's just pictures taken with my mobile phone. I also put up pictures with my ordinary camera. So I do it every day. So I show I can do this every day. I put 1 or 2 pictures up, a new picture. And I don't just put a picture because I take one. It has to be an edited picture, and it has to have a meaning also. So, and that has led to these 2 assignments for me, that I do that. But it's not enough just put out pictures. I think because now that everyone can do these pictures, you have to show who you are yourself. So there is a saying that you should be personal but not private. So my Facebook account is not private anymore, but it's very personal. I don't just put up pictures there. I put up articles that I read, or music that I like, or a film I want to see, or anything like that, to show who I am and what my values are and what I believe in. And also go around and comment other people and find what they like. For me, it's a fantastic channel to see. I get articles that other photographers or people put up that I can read, information that I couldn't get otherwise. So I think that's fantastic.
Peter, you're the other photographer here.
Yeah, I'm curious, how many people in this audience make most of their living from photography? Have anybody? Okay. How many of the rest of you make more from photography than you spend on photography?
Whoa.
Should ask the first audience
Think
that.
about that.
So that's an interesting thing. We now know something about our audience. I think panels are interesting when you have a little bit of a
back and forth
disagreement,
Yeah,
and
disagreement.
I'm going to disagree with something you said in your presentation earlier.
Good.
Which was, I believe, a rather cavalier dismissal of the professional photography model in favor of teaching workshops. And I really believe in sustainability and diversification. I personally have diversified my income stream so that there's a big chunk of it that's not from photography. But I am concerned when I hear people who are part of the ecosystem but haven't depended on it, just sort of dismissing the fact that people ought to be paid a living wage or a middle class wage for practicing this craft. And I think one of the things that's an important exercise for any photographer who's interested in making a living off of it, or making a big chunk of their living, is to really look into the future and see what is sustainable, what people have to pay for because they can't get it for free. And there's a lot of things, beautiful pictures of wildlife, almost nobody's going to pay you. You can, maybe if you're Franz Lanting or, a handful of other people. But, and I'll give you an example. In my own career, about 12 years ago, I realized that most of what I did for a living, product photography or architecture photography, could be done by non-professionals or purchased on the stock photography market. And I concentrated my own business on photographs of people who are the real people for a company or an association, something where you have to hire somebody to do that. You can't buy a picture probably of the chief executive or the people that benefit from your organization. And I think one of the hard exercises for professional photographers is to look and see what can be delivered cheaply or free by the marketplace, and try and figure out something that you can deliver that's different than that.
That's a great point, Peter. Thank you for making that.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, by the way. I just to not be controversial. I think the point I was making was a corollary to that, which was really that there are a lot of models that, in addition to selling photographs, that can be developed. There are musicians who make money selling music. They are a very small percentage of all the people who want to be musicians. There are more musicians who make more money performing at concerts. and giving away their music as a way to brand themselves and as a way to get awareness. So I think it's just important, as the world of photography is radically transforming itself, it is important, whether it's highly specialized and understanding, the key is really understanding who's paying the bills, right? Understanding what the audience is and what your model is. If you try to do a little bit of everything everywhere, you're probably not going to succeed. If you specialized in the real people in boom, 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 you know who your audience, they know who to call, but there might be one guy like Peter Krogh, and there's not going to be even 10 or certainly not thousands of you, right, doing that necessarily. There's going to be a few people who specialize, and then other people specialize in other places. So I think that it's just understanding that. But I'm going to move it along, and we can come back to this with the audience so we can cover more terrain. And I'm going to hand it over to Severin, and then probably back to Peter, just so we can have more controversy. I want to talk about the photo stream. So we had an interesting discussion about sort of the image versus the stream, or maybe the image and the stream. And Peter actually brought this up. And of course, you've seen some, I think, pretty striking images, all crowdsourced, all sort of submitted for free, just running on the screen behind you here. I'll start it up again. But these were coming from IM, and it was just a call for people to kind of interpret what it meant, what Nordic Light meant to them. And so I want to hear some thoughts about sort of the crowd model, the photo stream, and then from a free app perspective over here, and then sort of maybe from a, what does it mean from a, what does the photo stream mean, and who ultimately owns your photo when it ends up in the stream, which I think Peter might have an opinion on.
Yeah, talking about the photo stream. So I think in the age of mobile photography, so where almost everyone has a camera through his mobile and they share their photos, we're confronted with so many more images than we have been just 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And some people may argue, so what kind of value do these images have? Because, everyone takes a photo of his coffee saying, well, I'm drinking a coffee. And what value does that have in terms of photography, in terms of a message that's being communicated? I think because of this phenomenon that everyone is a photographer and shares so many photos online all the time, photography is becoming much more of a communication medium than it has been before. So, but also like the messages that work on this medium are very different than other messages. So I think photography nowadays can be, can serve as a representation, can serve as a communication, can serve as a documentation of things. And I think we have to be aware of basically this different medium that is the mobile phone and that is the internet, where you consume so many things at the same time, and our brains also change the way they consume photos. And so I'm definitely in favor of the photo stream, because some phenomena that we see, for example, we were talking about the future of photography, what it's like to be a photographer in 5 years. And there's definitely the fear of photographers. They are being replaced by a new generation of people who just take a mobile phone and take a photo. And the question is this photo any better than the photo of someone who has been 40 years in the industry? It's a tough question to answer. But at the same time, there's the phenomenon, for example, that I see people signing up on our service or signing up on Instagram. They take the first photos and they're not very good. But because they consume hundreds of photos every day and they get into this whole community thing and consuming photos from people from all over the world, their photos become much better after a few weeks, and they probably get sucked into photography and start being photographers and seeing themselves as photographers. So it's something that's happening right now with the democratization of photography that has happened to, music and other arts before, where basically everyone is a photographer, and still I think you can distinguish the good ones or the ones that you like from the ones that you don't like. And I think it's an incredible medium, and it definitely changes the way we see the world as well. I would be interested in what Peter says about that.
I'm not going to get as worked up as I was yesterday.
Oh, please, come on, Peter. It's so much more fun.
I think the way to start, though, is to agree with you that the photo stream is incredible, and it's a wonderful development, and I think photography has never been more important in the history of communication, and photography has never been more accessible and never been more widely practiced, and I think that's an absolute great thing. And the part of me that helps people manage their images really loves the fact that there are an infinite number more people with this problem than just the professional photographers. But my caution in the thing that I did rant so red-faced about yesterday was that I think it's important to understand the license that you're giving when you're giving your photos out onto the photo stream, and to understand which photos you should be putting out there and under what terms. And the terms of service of IM, I believe, are very favorable for photographers. I believe that the terms for Instagram are not favorable for most photographers. You grant an irrevocable license in perpetuity. You agree to pay their lawyers if they ever get sued for the pictures, and you agree they can sell them to whomever they want. And this agreement has no end. So if you put a picture up on Instagram, theoretically, according to the contract, you could agree to pay their lawyers 30 years from now if they sold that picture to somebody else.
I think, Peter, this is when you ask the audience how many of them use Instagram.
Yeah, I was afraid to ask that question.
How many of you
Instagram
use-
users?
The faces, yes.
They just stopped today.
Yeah, and so these guys have seen a market opportunity
Join us.
to be more fair, and which is not to say that I don't put stuff up on Facebook, but I wouldn't put, to go back to your brand concept, if you have a core brand of your most important images, a body of work you've been working on a long time, if you think about, how do we craft a brand to make a living as a photographer, you wouldn't necessarily want to give all of those away. Now you also need to promote what you're doing, and Knut here is going to say, throw them out there, right? But it's a tough decision. But I think you do have to read terms of service. You have to think about what you're doing with your photos, and even if you're just an individual, because it's your identity, you're actually giving them your identity and letting them use that forever. And you have no control over how it gets used, ever.
Something I would add here, because it's something I see a lot, is people apply to contests. It is incredibly great to apply for contests. These are things you can put on your resume. It's a way that you build your contacts and spread your work. You must read the rules of the contest. There have been a couple contests actually supported by companies you may know, that if you read deeply in, they own that picture forever and ever, can do anything they want with it. And that maybe that's not what you meant to give them when you paid them to enter this contest, right? I mean, it's like, I'm going to pay you so you can have my picture forever. That's kind of a strange thing. And I think something that Knut said that sort of comes in here is, in the past, professional photographers would have shot and would have sold or kept the best of that and maybe put the seconds into stock. I think in the same way, we may come to a place where photographers will shoot and keep the best for their portfolio or for their sales, and their seconds, which for some people are quite good, will be what they can put on that social stream and let go of. I think still the indemnity is a problem, but I think that idea that that's things you do in that public space and those things you keep for your portfolio.
Knut, I just want to make sure when you comment now that you touch on this, thing we talked about briefly yesterday, which is, the professional photographer versus the so in other words, they're really good photographers who never intend to make any money on it, and therefore might not care if their picture is used, and it might even encourage it. So touch on that element as well, and whatever you were going to add to this conversation.
Now I have to think.
Sorry.
No, I think, I've seen now for the 2 or 3 last years when I put out so much pictures, I know that I go out and shoot new pictures tomorrow, and I do it all the time. And I've seen that this thing that I'm doing, it's increasing my creativity. So I'm gaining so much of it, so I don't care. And the pictures that I put out, I make them like 1,000 pixels wide at most. So they're not very big. You can't print anything. You can use them somewhere on the internet. but you can't print of them. But on the other hand, I don't know what the numbers are for last year, but the year before, they put out pictures on Facebook, and I happen to know they put out 45 billion pictures just on Facebook, 2011. And with that amount of pictures, maybe I should be glad if they pick one of my pictures, you know? How are they going to find that my pictures are worth using among all those pictures? Maybe they find some way in the future, but I don't care because I go out and shoot new pictures, because I do that all the time. But there is one thing that I think is very important that we shouldn't forget. We are always talking about good photographers or bad photographers, or a good picture or bad picture. But what is photography? Two very important things. What is photography? Photography is communication. That's what photography is. You're communicating something. And who are the experts on communication? Usually it's the professional photographers. So if you use a decently good picture taken about someone who isn't a photographer, and you think, oh, this picture is perfect, I can use this, they nearly always forget that this picture is sending a message. And that we, as professionals, we are a kind of experts on visual communication, and that's our stronghold as professional photographers, and that is what we have to use in the future. I know some companies that I worked with before I came in. They used to pick pictures that were technically decent, but they're sending out message. If you use pictures like that, you're sending out a message that I don't care about this. I just pick this. If you're a company and you say, I want to be the best of something, you also want to have the best pictures. You don't have a company saying, I'm the best company in, you know, whatever it could be. We could take the bakery just for an example, and you put out bad pictures. So it means, okay, I want to be a good bakery, but I don't care about what the message I'm sending. And that's what we have to think about in the future as a professional photographer. That's what we are experts on.
I have to jump in I'm a professional photographer as well, and I work with Peter at ASMP, which is a professional organization. And one of the things that becomes really clear, the word sustainability. It's great to talk about giving away your photographs when you're starting out. It's great to just, this idea of, well, I can generate photographs as long as I live. But the fact is, when you, at some point in your life, you won't be able to take photographs. You get older, you get sick, something's going to happen. And the value of a professional photographer's work is very much tied in with the rights that they retain, and the rights as a profession that we hold on to, dear to us. Because once you hold on to those rights, you can repurpose your photographs. You have control over them. You own them. You can do all kinds of things that will then bring in income that works for you even when you're not photographing. And this dovetails to what we were talking about earlier, where you have new opportunities to sell your work as ebooks. There's a whole myriad of ways of making money through what we call multiple revenue streams that works when you're not working. And when you look at the big picture of our profession, we have to survive ultimately. And that's why it's so. I just want to really emphasize what Peter was saying, how important it is that we pay attention to these right issues. I don't know how much we want to go more into that, but it's just
so I want to be the controversial one here.
Okay,
it's like
good.
So I think that's one of those. Yes, that was the past, and get over it. Doesn't exist anymore. There are a few. I mean, and I'm channeling Alex Webb a little bit when I said that. Alex yesterday said, something to the effect of, I used to believe that I could take a bunch of pictures and that would create an annuity stream, so that when I retired, that would be my annuity. He said, that doesn't exist anymore. And that's Alex Webb.
I'll argue with that. Well,
that's Alex Webb.
But that's Alex Webb, but I will argue with you on that.
So I think that, it's, somebody else was talking about, I think maybe you mentioned your $12 a month or a year check that screwed up your taxes, right, from stock photography. So look, if you are a famous photographer and you have an incredible body of art, maybe fine art photography, and you have managed to make a name for yourself, undoubtedly some of your images might have value, right? And you might even be able to realize some of that value. But in today's world, with such unlimited, the vast majority of photographers will most likely not be able to monetize that stream in that their works at a later stage in their lives.
We can argue about that because I make several $100s a month from one little ebook I put up that's some of my photographs that sells for $9.99. So
anyway. Let's move on to the next. I think
Yeah.
Mikkel, you've got the next topic here, so let's move on.
Yeah. No, I'm going to stay with this topic. No, the
you're
other
not.
thing that was very interesting that I would love to hear some discussion about is the move towards going from observation to participant. And a lot of, Hans-Peter mentioned some of the wearable cameras of the future, and we're already starting to see cameras, the GoPro. It's becoming easier and easier to basically hang a camera someplace and wear it or have it, around you. So what happens to, is this a good thing or a bad thing, or is it irrelevant? But the idea that a photographer is going from having to actively participate and have the camera in front of their face to being able to participate. Let's say you're a doctor and you're in an emergency situation. You have your cameras all around your body, and you can yet still perform and participate. So I'm just curious about. Does anybody want to hit that?
Well, yeah, I think partially you've already started answering, right? It is contextual. It depends tremendously on the context. In any particular context, like the example I brought up is I have a 2-year-old daughter, and whenever we have a birthday party or any sort of celebration, the moment I pick up the camera to start documenting and shooting, I'm taking myself out of the celebration. I can either help her blow her candles, or I can either take pictures of her blowing her candles. What these wearable things is it removes the distinction between this split between observer and participant, but it's an entirely optional thing. I can still choose to take the camera. I don't have to go with a wearable. So I think I have faith that it will work itself out. I think there are very strong social mores against people being recorded constantly. And I think there'll be some sort of social backlash around that if people start doing it indiscriminately in places where it's not really welcome. I think there will be contexts where it will be totally acceptable. And that will evolve. And so I have confidence that will happen. But the really striking part and the really where it really gets interesting is when you get to some of what I would call vertical markets for something like Google Glass, the doctor, anything where, because one of the things in particular specifically about Google Glass, it's not. It mixes two things. It's both a wearable camera as well as an augmented reality platform. It overlays over the reality. So you can use it to have two hands free while you are doing something and record it. So you can be, say, trying to teach someone a lesson how to cook, and as you cook, capture everything that you're doing. But you can be actually following a lesson on how to cook and have that come up on your screen as you're doing it. So it's those kinds of very specific, like the doctor example, or any kind of industrial applications and things like that, where I think it's going to be, and at that point you don't really have the social mores problem. That I think that is where you're going to see tremendous impact.
Beth, yeah.
Well, I just add, I think it's a future that we won't be able to change. I think everything will become much more visual than it is. And the future that we will wear Google glasses in 3 years, and items in 10 years that we don't even know about is inevitable. So it will happen. And it will happen that in 10 years, we will look back and think, oh, that was so stupid to have an iPad. It's just like a 2D screen, that you have with you, and it's so heavy. Like, screens will be all around us, I think, and images will be all around us. I think the question that's important back then is then, in the future, is like, what makes a photograph if images are all around us anyway? And what makes the photographer is probably still about capturing, a certain moment, freezing in time, and adding a unique perspective, which is also what Alex Webb kept on repeating. That is about his unique perspective on the world, and his relationship to the world is what he captures. And I think this will definitely remain no matter how many pictures are around us and how we record them.
I think in some ways it's almost like we need more words, and that all the pictures, I celebrate all pictures. I love the stream, I love pictures, I love taking pictures, I love taking fun pictures and junk pictures and serious pictures, and I love encouraging others to do that. But to realize that a photographer is someone who does this with intent, with quality, with consciousness, and that whether there's another word for it, the stream is something else, and it's not a plus minus. It's not a value judgment. It's a different creature. And I think the example I used when we were talking was, I have a pen. I can make a laundry list. I can make a poem, and I think it's the same thing. That there's going to be pictures. I hope continue to be pictures that are poems, pictures that will touch our hearts and change our lives and change our minds, and there'll be pictures that are our memories and our hello, how are yous, that are touching other people. And both those things will continue to live side by side.
Yeah, for those of you who recall the talk this afternoon that I gave, the sociologist at UC Berkeley talked about these motivations, right? And there is a motivation, a strong motivation, I think, that probably all of us have had in this room, which is to create poetry. It's for the taking pictures and making pictures. It's purely for the art of it, right? For the expression. And then there are all these facets to it. I'm going to let you hold the mic, but I'm going to change the subject, and then maybe this is the last round, and then we open it up for input from the group. And so this one, I think, is kind of you and Yvonne get to address this from different angles. The first one is, I don't know about you guys, but I have tens of thousands of images, and that's just the ones on my hard disk. And in fact, Peter confided in me that he has over 400,000. So when you have as many images as we all do, and they exist on SD cards, on hard drives, inside our laptop, in networks, on the cloud, there's this kind of interesting two facets to it. One is just how the hell do you manage it? How do you keep track of it all? And what are kind of the emerging new things perhaps we see for that? And the other one is sort of a corollary to that, or a very related question, which I'm going to ask Yvonne to address a little bit, is what's sort of the search space look like? Google image search is kind of interesting today because it can index the World Wide Web of images and find a lot of good stuff. But what's your personal search space, and what's your social search space, and what does search and discovery become in that space? So maybe start with just the damn question.
Turns out there's a book about that.
Oh, really?
Damnbook.
Damnbook.com. So why don't you start with that one?
Yeah. So I think, speaking in real high-level generalities, I do believe that photographers need to be responsible for their own stuff. And that, at least for now, particularly for anybody who's shooting raw, and let's use that as sort of a dividing line between what is okay to, or what you can put up in the cloud affordably with good confidence, and what you really need to be in charge of yourself. And if you're a raw file shooter, or scanning lots of stuff, you need to be in charge of it. And that means what you need to do is build a consolidated archive, put all your stuff in as close to one place as possible. And from just a simple mechanics standpoint, I think then the next thing is to have a catalog of what you've got. I personally favor Lightroom as a place that I can just dump everything in, and I can have access to what is now 11 years of digital photography at my fingertips, with me wherever I travel. And so that's where we are right now. There's all kinds of wonderful abilities for the cloud to make images discoverable and to share with people and to put them out on the stream. But if you're not responsible for it, other people aren't going to be, and you're going to end up losing your stuff. And then beyond that, there is a little bit of sort of information architecture that you have to understand. I believe that understanding some basics about how metadata, like location tags or date tags, can help you make sense of even a very large archive of images. And there are many different pieces of software that allow you to make use of that stuff. I think we'll get Yvonne to talk. We had a very robust discussion about the possibilities out there to like scrape data off your phone and tag your images automatically and do all kinds of other automatic tagging, which is really cool possibility. But at the moment, it is really up to you. Consolidate your images, put them in a catalog, and do some basic organization to them, please.
So,
Back up, please.
so that's. I'm sure that resonated with all of those of you who are professional photographers in the room who spend your sort of time, your life doing this. For those of us who have another day job and we do this on weekends or night times or on airplane rides and we try to manage it, it's hopeless, right? It's like too many hard drives, too many this, too many that, too much money. So, Yvonne, what are we going to see on the kind of for the consumer, the prosumer, for the rest of us? And what's happening in the next generation?
I'm just not going to let that one sit there because that is not.
It's Yvonne's turn.
It's not just the pro, and I'll let him take over. But
I
it's
agree.
Not
It's
just the pro.
not just the pro.
But consumers don't tag their photos.
I agree.
The average user doesn't
Absolutely
tag their
not
photos.
true.
agree, it's
I
not
mean,
just
the people who are most fastidious about it that I come in contact with are generally not pros. They're people who go to festivals like this.
And there's the billion.
So
West.
I'm going to start with a downer, and I'm going to say that at some level the problem is fundamentally unsolvable. The amount of images that are being created.
That's what they
just
said
by
about
yourself,
putting a man on the moon.
Is it's accelerating. So, but what we can aim for is making the problem more manageable, so that it is an annoyance and not something that is an insurmountable obstacle. I think that as a first approximation, doing your own tagging is something that you can do with today's tools that can help you get a handle on this. But if I were to blue sky, I think that we would want something where the system has intelligence, where basically you interact with your images or with your photos all day long in various ways. You put them on social networks, you take them, you view them, you share them with people. Other people, once you share them into social networks, or even email them to people, then they get commented on and likes. You put them in print books, and you sit down and view them, see them in slideshows, pause them, spent sometimes inordinate amount of time editing them. All of that is a tremendous amount of data that can be used to establish what I would call a relevance metric. That can help you and that can help the system surface whatever most important photos you have. The system, this hypothetical system, could also do auto tagging by doing things like feature detection and machine vision. I mean, we can detect faces, we can detect cars, we can detect trees, we know what the lighting is in the image. We can do so. So it can do a tremendous amount of filtering based on that. But it has to be all cohesive. And I think right now we've only started to scrape at this particular problem, and but it's going to become much more critical that we address it in the future as the number of images goes like this. But optimally you would want you would want a mix of search and organization and discovery, right? Now, the other thing that came up in the conversation repeatedly is that we've evolved as extremely visual creatures. So I can look at a screen full of photos and in a second or two determine the 3 or 4 that really jump out at me. That's a tremendously hard problem for a computer. So some combination of farming out the hard work of classification and searching things to the computer and let the computer do what it's good at, and let us help it give us find the photos that we want.
So, Severin, let's have Severin talk to us briefly about what IM does, because there's a auto tagging feature there that I really love, and then also sort of speaks a little bit to the crowd as a tagging mechanism, right?
Yeah, basically we do kind of part of what you described. So we know that when you take a picture with your mobile phone, we have a lot of data about it. We know where you are, or the area where you are. I mean, of course, you can turn it off for privacy reasons, but lots of people have it turned on. And depending on that, like you take a picture here, and we tell you are in this cinema, and we guess what you might be doing here. So you might be attending a conference, or you might be watching a movie, and we add that to the picture. So in the next step, it already tells you watching a movie at Caroline Cinema. And so we actually do categorize these photos for you already. And in the next step, when you share these photos, we show you photos that relate to that topics. So it's not, of course, something different than your personal database of 10,000 of images, raw files. It's something different. But it actually shows that already now it's possible to categorize these photos on an automatic basis. And just when I talked before about, that I think in 10 years we'll have screens and images all around us, you can imagine that there's be something like, Google Glasses or like a projector, and it tells you these photos are currently being taken all around you, around the corner. You see, oh, there's a party around the corner, or my wife is cooking me dinner, or whatever. It's, I think this is where it's going, and it's also what Hans-Peter had in his presentation just before, that all this information is there, and if you choose to share it, a computer or an app or an algorithm can tell you how to make that relevant to you, how it makes you it searchable and discoverable for you. And also, probably on this data makes you surprises, I think that's where it becomes really interesting, that you discover something you have never heard about it before, but somehow you see, oh, I'm interested in that, why do I see that? That's what basically all social networks are working on at the moment, If you think about Facebook ads, Facebook wants to make ads relevant to you, but then you see, a cooking course or whatever, and it's not relevant to you. But that's what everyone's working on, and Google Ads as well, to show you what's really interesting to you, and to discover something that takes you by surprise is the most beautiful thing, because you don't want to control all the time what you see. You want to be surprised. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges also in the future.
So should we take some questions?
That's a good point to ask how you feel about this. It's your chance to help us define the future here. What are you seeing as your big problems?
We have a question over here.
Yeah.
I see a problem.
Could you give that to her? Hold on. Thanks, Severin.
We can repeat the question as well.
I worry about my pictures in 5 years, 10 years, 100 years. How can I know that they will be able to read my pictures? Because systems are constantly changing, and I know that pictures I took 5 years ago, if I change computer, suddenly there is no files on disk or whatever, and I have to reinstall something else. And
Well, I'm going to have to pass this to Peter and just say that this is his world that he lives in, and so you go ahead and respond.
So there's a couple of things. One is this gets exactly to the thing I was saying, that you have to be responsible for your stuff, and you need to consolidate it in one place. And then the next thing to say is that storage is a process. You do something now, you're going to have to do something again in the future and again in the future. And there is, at the moment, not really one great way to do that, although Gene has an opinion on that that was actually a good one. But even then, it's really about consolidating all your stuff together in one place. I wouldn't be so worried about the formats becoming unreadable. The only formats that we're really seeing that are truly unreadable are very early formats from the early 90s. And pretty much any raw image formats from 2000 onward is the decoding, the way to open that file is essentially public knowledge, so it's not going to go away.
do you think so?
I know so.
In 50
No,
years.
Peter and
100
I
years,
disagree on this, so. I've seen formats disappear, including the photo CD process. I can't open my photo CDs anymore.
Raw file formats from cameras.
I'm not.
So where I would disagree with Peter is that I would pick formats that institutions that are specially concerned about long-term archival storage are embracing. So, for example, the Library of Congress has embraced DNG instead of just the proprietary raw formats of the various camera manufacturers. The problem with the actual, like, say, Canon's RAW is that you can decode that with that software running on that computer today. And, Adobe might not be in business 20 years from now, right?
DC RAW is open source.
So,
It's not going away.
so okay.
So Peter said DC RAW, which is another encoder. It's open source. But
But no, I believe
come on.
DNG. I believe
Yeah,
DNG.
you're the DNG guy. I can't believe you're arguing this one.
So things like DNG, JPEG, and that's for rough. Even if you have JPEGs, JPEG is an open standard. There's encoders. There's going to be decoders, and TIFF. So those kind of open formats. But certainly, look to the Library of Congress.
Yeah.
That would be my.
But
my
that's a
my
really
first
good fear. You
observation.
had every right in the world to fear
biggest
that.
danger is you not taking care of your stuff. Not that the file becomes unreadable. The biggest danger is you get a new computer, you think you've transferred everything and you haven't transferred it, or as she said, that you gotta back up your stuff.
Yeah, but we see pictures now that are 100 years old, almost it will be 200 years old. I don't think I will live that long. And what if there are pictures that I would want generations
You
to
want
see?
to print them. I mean, I read every article on backup, and I do every backup. I am hysterical about backup. I have cloud, I have hard drives, I have DVDs. And if you really have a picture you want to preserve, then you want to archivally print it and archivally store it. Because that means other people will. Because you also have to worry about the media becoming unreadable. It's not just the file format.
Oliver, you had your hand up. Oliver was with us for the last 2 days.
Here, Oliver.
So I think the best way to make sure that it's going to be around is make people want it to be around, and so they will preserve it for you. I don't think there's any other way you can make sure that your images will be around after you die. And the other thing I wanted to add is that, in my opinion, being obsessive about maintaining your images over decades in pristine condition is maybe not healthy. My father passed away about 2 years ago, and we have stacks, and the whole house is basically full of images, and we won't have a chance to ever do anything with that. But he made like 3 or 4 books where he picked images and he made them for us, and he made like this has been your life kind of photo book, and I'm sure I will keep that one around, and at least until I pass away, and I think that's you have to pick maybe 10 pictures a year, and the rest let them go. That's, I think, the healthy way.
You'll be
to
doing your
deal with
children
that.
a favor.
You will be doing your children a favor, and you will be doing yourself a favor, because even if you're a professional photographer, maybe 90% of your images are crap anyway.
Alex Webb actually kind of would support you on that. He has a wonderful book. For those of you who haven't seen it, you should try or even buy it. I think you can find it on Amazon. It's called Suffering of Light, and it's basically it's a collection of his best images. And so somebody asked him at some point, how many good images do you make every year? And he said, well, if you look at the Suffering of Life, that's about 150 images. I've been at this for about 30 years. So I figure about 5 images a year. And that's Alex Webb. He's pretty good at it, right? So maybe if all you need to do is really preserve 5 images a year for posterity, then
Small
maybe,
hard drive.
with a guy with 400,000 images here can't wrap his head around that. Okay, let's move on to the next question.
Yeah, more pain, anybody?
More questions.
More pain, more questions? Yeah.
I think that it's not a problem of future to take photographs or to storage the photographs, but the problem is how you can find a photograph. If you have millions and millions of photographs in future in the files or in the computers or wherever. So what is the system that you can find the interesting ones of these millions, what you like to see or what you like? You know that there are beautiful images or important images you need or you like to see or print or whatever, but what is the fucking system in the future that you can find it?
Well, I think I explained enough about what we do with our app and how it works with the tags and stuff. I think, though, that, we get data on locations and stuff, and it's just the beginning, Also, like what Peter talked about, tag your images, I think tagging your images is quite like a cumbersome way of categorizing images. Why do I have to do that? Why do I have to think, this image is, there's a person, there's black and white, whatever tags you use. So one thing we talked about actually, what might be possible in the future, was just an idea, no idea if it's gonna happen or not. Imagine something like this wristband, that exists now that basically measures how you sleep and how your pulse is and so on. Imagine a device that can actually analyze how you feel when you see a photo. If your heart beats faster, or if your skin gets hot, or what's happening in your brain, and which saves this data, and upon this, makes your photos, categorizes your photos, and makes it, whenever your heart beats at 140 beats per minute, it shows you these photos. So something like that, I think, could be possible in the future, and which would be a completely new take on how to discover these photos.
So you just have to wait for the future to solve your problem.
Well, the other thing I would say is that I think we outlined a number of different techniques that future systems could use to make it easier to find your photos. But beyond that, there's a couple other things that come to mind. The first one is that the more time that has passed since you took the photo, the more likely it is that you've forgotten it. They're fresh in your mind when you took them then. And there's always been a realization, certainly from the video production side, for example, that it's always cheapest and easiest to inject metadata into the system at the earliest possible point. So, to that extent, tagging your photos is certainly part of it, and tagging them as soon as possible, identifying the ones you like. But also, into the extension of how could these systems evolve to make it easier. You could allow you to tag the photo the moment you took it. You could allow you to voice tag the photo the moment you took it. It could capture audio and do voice recognition and text to speech. So you could be saying something about the photo, and then be able to use that for searching. And I mentioned other relevance metrics that you could use, that the system could use, things like how much time spent editing or viewing the photo, or how much it was shared. So I think there are lots of pieces of the system already, and there's technologies that are evolving that can make that even better. I am not aware of anybody who's actually doing this kind of global system that can do all of these things together. But that there is a need is clearly a need with the photo, with a curve, with the shape of the curve of the number of photos being generated.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, while Peter thinks about what he's going to say, I'm going to disagree here with my honorable colleague to the point that I think tagging is stupid. I don't think because nobody does it. I mean, Flickr actually was very, was an early proponent of tagging, And if you look at the statistics, very few people, and Flickr's a photo community, right? Again, those of you who are professionals who need to manage this, who are very kind of organized, have workflows, I'm sure you do it. And I occasionally do it as well. But it's just too much work. We're lazy. Human beings don't do this. So where I think it's going to go, and actually I like IM a lot because they make it really simple. They pop up the tags. You should price it. It's a scratching the surface. It won't solve all your problems, but it's very simple. So the stuff Ivan's talking about where it'll figure it out for you and then give you enough context as like, it's about 3 months ago and I think I was with my family. I remember I was with my family. So like I was going to say, and so it will figure out that it was family 3 months ago and I was in northern Sweden. Okay, that's enough for me to go boom, 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 and then narrow it down to about 100 images that I can browse through. And if I took 5 that look the same, it even groups them together, so it's really easy to kind of get. That stuff will happen. Forcing people to tag their photos, other than professionals and anal retentives, it won't happen. I'm sorry. Now it's your turn.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate
You've had some
that.
time to think, Peter.
So I think Hans-Peter, for his brilliance, doesn't quite understand tagging. And so let me give you an example of what I would suggest by tagging. So number one, first, most important thing, set the clock in your camera correctly. You will now be tagging all of your images with the correct date and time, which is incredibly useful for most photographers. The second thing is to tag by location, which can be done in one large group. So I'll probably shoot 600 pictures while I'm here. All of them will be tagged with Christensen, Norway. That will take me, I don't know, 5 seconds to do all of those. And 10 years from now, I can go back and I say, I'm looking for a picture that I shot in this fishing village. I don't have to go in and tag for the little museum place where we shot all those cool, old boat stuff. Because I know that it's probably in that place. I remember that it was there. So date, automatically, location, done with a big group. Event name, again, can be done to a large group of photos really quickly. And then finally, how much you like the picture. And this one takes more work. But when you look through a set of pictures, there's a part in your brain that's going, good one, great one, bad one, terrible one, bad one, good one. If you use the rating stars, which is a very simple thing, to at least tag the ones you think are the best, you float them up to the top.
So Peter's talking about Lightroom right now as an
Well,
organizer.
but those are universal tools
or
in
Aperture,
many pieces of software,
right.
and that information trades back and forth.
Yes, I can understand this, and that's of course what every photographer must do, to tag his or her own images. But I mean, if all our images are in some files, and I know that somebody has taken beautiful images, how I can go to some other files or find from the net or wherever the beautiful images of the certain things which I like which are not dated, which are not can be found by the date or the real tag if they are connected to emotions or different abstract things. How can you?
So somebody else's pictures, not your own pictures.
Yeah. So that if I like to see the beautiful images which are maybe taken by Koivisto, so I can never find it if I don't know his name or something. What I can Google. Yeah. So I know that, or somebody has taken beautiful images outside from here the absurd climate in the Christian Sund. So what is the right word that I can?
I think you wear Google glasses and it'll read your mind and it'll find it for you.
I think that's the problem. I can't see any real.
Well, it's a problem that Google's basically working on. Yeah.
Questions?
It's actually quite a different theme. Are we done with this topic?
Yes.
Well, I just want to make a real quick response. Sorry, but that's something that the Google search, the Google brilliance is going to come in, and they'll probably use some of the techniques that Ivan was talking about, was reading more into the image. So.
Mikkel, I think as you're saying that, the world's largest image repository is Facebook, and they don't allow Google to search them, right? So we're also seeing this issue of silos occurring. So I think it is, fundamentally, I think I can agree with my esteemed colleague here, which is I think it is fundamentally, if not unsolvable, a very hard problem to solve.
Right.
But we'll find, increasingly better ways. I mean, the cameras ultimately are the origin of the images. That's where the tagging has to start. The cameras have to get a lot smarter. They need a brain, right? Yeah. And then from there, it'll become easier because images will be somewhat normalized and categorized.
Smart photos.
Smart photos. And we got a.
One very short, small thing. I have one of my absolutely best friends in Sweden. His name is Kato Lane. He's a Norwegian photographer, but he lives in Stockholm. I gave him my Canon EOS 1D Mark II. I gave it to him because I thought he needed a better camera than he had. And I forgot that I had programmed my camera with my copyright. So it says copyright Knut Koivisto. After 3 or 4 months, he calls me and says, "There's something wrong with this camera," because my customers keep calling to me and said, "Why do you send these pictures and charge us? They're taken by Knut Koivisto." And they even put my name in the paper on his pictures because I programmed that camera with that copyright. I forgot to take it back. Good move.
Yeah, good move.
All right, question.
I just want to go back to Mikkel's comment on the pricing on photography.
Yeah.
What is the highest price that's actually been sold when it comes to a digital version of a picture, and when, if ever, will a digital version be as valuable as a printed version?
So when you talk about a digital version, are you talking about like what a news agency will pay for a digital version,
I know.
No, if you want something in your living room,
okay, digital print.
as a digital.
I know the answer.
Movie. Yeah.
The answer is very simple, because the most expensive photograph ever sold by Gursky, what's his name? Anton Gursky. Yeah. It's a huge picture. You can't put it on your wall. I've seen it myself. You had to put it on the floor and let your kids play on it, because it's big like a rug. And that picture is digitally, maybe it's shot on film, but it's digitally retouched, and things are taken away and printed after that. So it's a digitally.
Yeah, I don't think that's the question.
But they take the digital film and put it into a printer that with laser prints it on.
Just how much?
But
I think something like $5 million or
depends on the
something.
photographer.
If you can afford to buy a picture for $5 million, you can afford to build a wall for it, probably. But I don't think that was the question, right?
No, the question was the representation.
So buying the bits, as opposed to.
So you're buying all the rights to the image. So you own all the bytes, all the bits, and no one else can reproduce it. Is that what you're saying?
No, not that it's a physical one, not a physical print, but you buy just the screening.
Okay.
A file.
Just the file.
A digital file.
Unprintable.
Unprintable or unprinted?
Unprintable.
You can make it. You have to make it.
So you're buying the rights to display it on your computer.
I think it's a very good question.
Wow.
Because if we
question.
take our discussion previously, where we add sound to it, or smell to it, or
some
other
motion
stuff.
like Hans Peter showed you,
or
earlier.
some movement.
Yeah.
Where is it no longer a picture?
Yeah.
And
it's a great question. It's like, would you imagine somebody's perhaps selling you a box, a screen?
Yeah, screen.
As
fixed.
As are getting thinner and thinner, a wall which has a set of images embedded in them. Right. They're presented digitally, and it could be a one-off, right? It could be a I think it's a thought-provoking question, because as surfaces become displays, and I think increasingly they will, right? Windows will be able to tint and become a display. So if it's raining outside, you can choose to look at some of your beautiful summer pictures instead, and they can be displayed all over. That could also become a canvas for
I just want to really quickly say that this is a problem that museums have had to deal with the video art for years now, because that's exactly what they're doing. So there is precedent and there is money that's been exchanged. Hans-Peter? Oh.
I've been at Stephen Wirt's gallery in San Francisco at 49 Geary, and they've had an exhibition where they were all screens, and what you bought was the screen with this picture on it. And it was just like they were selling a framed picture, and I think the prices were in the $5,000 American dollar range. Not common, not the way things are really moving for most of us, but it has happened.
Oliver, do you have an answer for them? Or augment it?
Maybe not the definitive answer, but I think if you look at it differently, like the guy who had a presentation yesterday here, I think said, they paid him $250,000 to make a picture, right? And I think you can think about, maybe not getting, so much money for the picture itself, but for making it, you might get a huge amount of money for creating the picture.
As a commissioned art piece, basically. Any other questions?
Yeah.
You pass that behind you. Thank you.
So, you hear me? Good. You are predicting a future where everyone will be photographing at all times with geotagging and time tagging and maybe voice tagging, and everyone will have access to manual or automatic changing of the images, like changing the focus afterwards or removing or adding elements in the picture. What will that do to our concept of photography?
Well, that is exactly the question.
Yeah, that's what we spent 2 days talking about.
If I can just jump in on that one.
If I could put it pinpoint it a bit, some time ago, a man called Brian Walski took 2 moments from a war in Iraq, created 1 moment out of that, had this displayed as a great picture of what war is about, and was fired because he had made a falsification. He had created a moment that did not exist. Will that be the case in the future, or will that be applauded?
Well, that was art, not photojournalism.
That was photojournalism, but it was his concept of what it was.
But did he report and disclose?
No.
And I think that's the issue, right? Is reporting and disclosing. It's like what I mentioned in my talk. Chris was saying yesterday, when he submits his pictures to National Geographic, they have to be completely untouched DNGs, right? They have to be, and there is technology, we discussed this a little bit, there is technology today that can actually scan an image and understand whether that image has ever been retouched. So I think, there is an interesting question here, right, which is everybody wants to know a definitive answer to the future. The answer is yes, right? It's going to have many, it's like the question about film earlier. Will there be film in the future? Of course, there will be film, and I think people will be doing wonderful, beautiful things with film. There will also be all kinds of other modes of expression, and they're exploding. The means of expression, the vehicles, the channels, the distribution, everything is just taking off on an exponential curve. So what he did to me was lying, because he represented something into a channel that expected A and he gave them B. Even if it was a beautiful representation, it was a lie. And that was the problem, right? If you lie, you get fired.
He put a fiction book in the non-fiction
Section
shelf
of the book, exactly.
Yeah. That is the common idea about it right now. But is that going to be the case in the future, do you think? Would people care about it? Or would they, let's say, would they believe the photograph, or would they believe the photographer?
I think someone on these 2 days just threw out to annoy us. He said that photography is dead, long live imaging. And of course I was upset, but there is maybe some truth in it. If you're wondering how the pictures are true or not, I strongly recommend a book by a documentary filmer. His name is Errol Morris. He's actually an Oscar-winning director. He wrote a book that came out last year, and the name is Believing is Seeing. And after you read that, you understand that it really doesn't matter if the picture is true or not, because that's not the case when you report things. And I strongly recommend that you find that book. There is an 8-minute YouTube clip you can where he talks about it, and Because photography is not what you see in the frame. Photography is what you don't see in the frame. But I just want to say about what photography is in the future, and is photography dead? I think it's very. I'm so enthusiastic for the future because I see the parallels to 1850, when the painters said painting is dead, you know. And what did we get? We get Impressionism. And we're at the same point right now where we say photography is dead, there is nothing we can do. And I think we're going to get fantastic things in the future.
Okay, Kate, I hope I know where you're going with this.
Well, I want to go real quickly because I had a good friend who was a forensic photographer, and it wasn't the pictures. I mean, his job, he was hired to go out and photograph crime scenes, and his job, what he was paid for, was to go in as an expert witness and say, I took this is how I took it, this is why it's true. Right. Because the actual picture can, even in its truth, can be manipulated. Right. And I think that's going to be the key in journalism and documentary photography, is us trusting the source. Yeah. And that is going to have to be held on to really tight. And the closed loop and the chain of evidence that they're asking for at Geographic and they're going to ask for in these other journalism situations is going to be imperative as people come to believe nothing. I mean, and that's what more a problem. I think more a problem than believing what's not true is people believing nothing. When they're shown facts and an action is called for and they cannot believe it because they've seen so many fakes along the way.
I just want to jump. One thing that we did discuss is how important it is in terms of all this new types of photography is to come up with proper nomenclature, proper words to describe, so that people don't say photography and then not have a clear sense of what they're talking about. What type of photography are you talking about? You know, to give words and meaning so that when we say it's a photograph or it's a representation or it's a piece of art. I mean, there's all these different words we can use. Just like when in cooking, you have gourmet cooking, you have junk food, gourmet. You have a whole list, and that conjures up images. Now we need to do that. But we need to actually express that more in photography.
Yeah, you might consider falsifying your resume because it would look a lot better, but it would be a lie. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the guy from Cuba who was on the team, he said we entered the area of photography where people started to believe what they were seeing and taking it as proof, although it was never true. Right. The pictures could always lie, and people have used trick photography from the very beginning. And even if you don't do that, just by letting something out of the image and cropping it, or taking a different perspective, the image will lie. And just because it's been very hard to manipulate images, people have started to think that the visual representation in a photo is sort of a proof. But now, where it's getting easier and easier and easier, we have to face the reality that it's not. And, it never was.
There's, I think that was one of the points I was going to make, and I was also going to say that there's an exhibit in Washington right now about falsification of photographs before Photoshop, and it went back to the very beginning of photography. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But additionally, the three-dimensional imaging has been around since the very start of photography as well. And understanding what a photograph is within the context of more than just a two-dimensional representation is clearly a thing we've been grappling with as people who consume images and understand images since the very beginning.
Ivan, do you want to talk briefly about the verification technologies out there?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on two things. Mm-hmm. We did touch on that it's another unsolvable problem, but there are ways to ameliorate it. One of the things we discussed is one of the other people in the group had a patent on basically doing cryptographically authenticating that the photo was taken with the camera the moment it comes off the sensor, so that so the bits are digitally signed, and then you can tell if they have been altered. So this doesn't preclude you from doing photo manipulation in other ways, but it does at least, you can at least get that kind of guarantee. That's one level. And second, there are already a number of techniques that are being used. There's a startup that was created by the former product manager of Adobe Photoshop who is actually doing this exact thing.
Kevin Conner.
Yep, Kevin Conner's startup. The name slips my mind. And there was, for example, a paper in this last, SIGGRAPH is a big computer graphics academic conference that happens every year. There was a paper that came out this year that it's extremely elegant because it's such a simple thing, because many manipulations are rather crude. I mean, they look very clean, but they don't pay attention to the geometry. So they were able to detect an amazing number of manipulations done with Photoshop by doing vanishing point analysis. Because it turns out that in many, many cases, you end up getting multiple vanishing points. And that's not supposed to happen.
So I think we are
We're at the end.
we
here.
are at the end.
Yeah.
Mikkel, any final comments?
No,
from you?
it's thank everybody that came a long ways for the N Festival. Thanks to Nokia and Hans Peter for their generous support of the N Festival, and thank everybody here for participating and your great questions. So thank you very much.